Welcome back to another episode of the Be the CEO of Your Life and Business podcast. So this week we are going to talk to you about, say this is a mindset issue, right? So Laura and I just came off of a really hectic month in October. It was really hectic all around between extracurricular activities with our kids and things happening in our business, like with clients and court appearances and closings and things like that. And also we were both traveling one week in particular, and we were both out of the office at two completely unrelated events. And leading up to that particular week, I had this feeling of overwhelm, just thinking like, how am I going to adjust for the days that I am going to be out of the office? Not only out of the office, but because I was traveling out of the state, I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much to think about. There's so much to coordinate. There's so much to plan. And forgetting that, like, I've had to do this before when my husband travels, or I've had to do this before if like there's been a team member down in the office. But you don't think of that right away, right? Like our first reaction is like, let's think of all of the overwhelm and all of the problems and let's stress about that. And then I realized, what if I just put this down on a piece of paper? Like, what if I just wrote down, okay, this is where everybody has to be, or these are all the things that have to be taken care of during the day for the business? Would it make it better? Like, would it eliminate some of that overwhelm and some of the drama? And no cliffhanger here, folks, but like, yeah, that's exactly what happened, is that once I actually put down a plan, like really set into motion some kind of action plan to tackle the issues or tackle coverage for my kids or tackle coverage in our business, it seemed to like just help lift that weight off of my shoulders.
Yeah. Because I think what we do is we catastrophize everything.
Yes.
At least Amy and I do.
Yes.
Of course, we're speaking for ourselves, but I'm sure that there are other people out there, especially moms in particular, who are overwhelmed by work, family, kids, all the things, right? Yeah. So at least I know for myself, when I have so much going on like that, especially the month of October was completely insane. I was in 4 different states. I traveled 4 different times. I was on a plane twice. Like it was a crazy, crazy month. And I totally catastrophized everything. Like overwhelmed by the amount of travel I had to do, overwhelmed by living out of a suitcase, overwhelmed by the amount of sports. And that doesn't even include work.
Right.
Right. So I have all that stuff and then everything going on at work. So until I put it down on paper and made a list of everything I had going on, when you do that, it makes you realize, okay, this is actually manageable. I am making this into not to say that it's not stressful and overwhelming, because it is, and it's a lot to manage. When you actually sit down and make a list and write it down, it becomes more manageable. Yes. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's almost like you're like putting down a recipe on a piece of paper. Like, to put in another analogy, you're giving step-by-step instructions to how, let's say, for example, how the kids have to get to school and to their sports. If you actually write that down and you don't think about all of the other things at once, and you just focus on, okay, what are the instructions for this? What's the plan for this issue in particular? It doesn't seem half bad.
Yeah. What I did is, now I think we talked about this on the podcast before. At one point, I was putting all of my evening activities for the kids in our Outlook calendar.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And I was so overwhelmed by that, just seeing it combined with my work. It was almost too much for me to look at.
Yeah.
So I separated it. So now I have my Google Calendar for all family stuff. And then obviously everything work related is in Outlook.
Right.
So even like yesterday, I went through, and because yesterday we finally finished fall sports, which I just finished a marathon. So yesterday we finished fall sports, but now, Kaylee's doing basketball, Matthew's going to start wrestling, and Chris has winter workouts for baseball. So it's not like things end, but it's not the monstrosity that it was for the fall season.
Right.
So yesterday morning, when I got to my desk, I opened up my Google Calendar and I pulled up Kaylee's basketball schedule, and it took me about 15 minutes, and I just entered everything into the calendar so that I could see what I have ahead of me for the next 2 months.
Oh,
right.
I love that kind of planning. Actually, I will share. Laura does this in her phone. Me, I'm still like a dinosaur, and I have to have a calendar. So okay, about 6 or 7 months ago, I tried to convince my husband to get us an acrylic calendar for our kitchen. So it could kind of be like our Mara like home base. And you could write notes, you could write the grocery list, you could have the entire month so you can see the whole month in one snapshot. And then he ended up getting me one for my birthday. And I'm so excited. It's up on the fridge. It's like so pretty and color coordinated. And then I realized that I was so stressed out by this calendar because I did not have the ability to flip to the next month and put down all of the dates for the next month. And like growing up, I remember this. My mom had a huge calendar that she would hang on our refrigerator, and it was for the entire year. It's like one that you would put on your desk, and she would fill out everything, and she would sit there like every year, and she would take out the years prior and start recording people's birthdays or different events and stuff like that. And I've realized how much that helped me just be able to take a schedule when I get it and put it all in one place. And like I've done that on our electronic calendar because we share a calendar, my husband and I, but to have it visually so I could be like, oh, what is happening on November 9th? And just flip to that next page, as opposed to, oh, let me go find the calendar. Let me go figure out where it is. I have a plan now in a visual format that's really helpful for me. And I don't have to worry about doing that every single month. Like you said, you just did it one day, and 2 months ahead. Now you have 2 months at a snapshot.
Yeah. And it's really, really helpful. So, I mean, we do this weekly, like we meet with our team weekly and go over what's coming on Thursdays. We've been trying to do it either Thursday or Friday. We go over what's coming for the upcoming week. So that's helpful. But this is like a bigger picture type thing. Like I will wake up in the middle of the night and start worrying about all of these things that are coming up. And I try to remind myself, okay, it's 3 a.m. You can't do anything about it now. So stop stressing yourself, go back to sleep.
One.
But 2, 99.9% of the time, it is not as big of a deal as I am making it. I am overwhelming myself. I am just making a much bigger deal out of these things than I have to. And when I actually sit down, like last week, I sat down and I made a list of all my litigation files, crossed off the ones that I'm going to be settling so I can take them out of the picture. And when I looked at the list, now this is obviously exclusive of my real estate practice, which is a monster in itself. But when I looked at the list, it was much more manageable than I was making it out to be in my head.
And that's, I think, the problem is that when we get stuck in our head, things snowball and they get so much bigger because you don't actually have a plan or something in front of you, because you keep thinking about one thing and then your mind wanders. Wouldn't it be a beautiful thing if we could, in an ideal world, just focus on one issue at a time? And yes, when you overlay them, there's going to be conflicts. You're going to have to figure out, okay, so-and-so has to get here at this time. And like, that's the point of mapping it out. What do we always say? We don't understand how you could fly by the seat of your pants and like just tackle every day as it comes. Having some measure of like planning involved really does help to eliminate the chaos. And as busy moms and as business owners and just trying to fulfill all of the obligations that we have, it can be very chaotic. Like that could be like the soundtrack of your life is chaos. And so having a measure of just putting something in place that you can really take a look at and be really thoughtful of like, okay, if I have this project due, or if I have these papers due, or if I have this closing coming up, how do I reverse engineer to just make that plan a little more seamless to get to, instead of letting it just fester in your head and becoming a bigger problem when you get down to it, you're like, wait, this isn't that big of a deal.
And it also, at least for us as business owners, it helped me see, okay, this doesn't need to be on my plate. I could shift this to somebody else. Or even if you make a list of like all the personal things you have going on, right? Can you hire somebody to help you clean your house? Or, is there somebody that can help you with all of the personal things that you have going on? Some people hire a personal assistant, a virtual one. Can you ask your significant other to help with certain things? Like having it all on paper helps you see the bigger picture.
Mhm.
And then if you look at it, you can break it down to see maybe there are some things you can take off of your plate.
Yeah.
It's not the like huge monstrous deal that I make out of it,
Mhm.
right? I do it to myself.
Yeah.
But when you look at everything on a piece of paper, you can see different options.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I did this, you know, I love a good brain dump. And I did this a couple weeks ago. And I had gotten into the office a little bit earlier. It was like a day off, or I think my husband was able to take the kids to school. And I got into the office and I just had a desk that looked like a bomb hit it. And I was like, oh, like that's it. Before I touch anything that I have to do for the day, I need to organize this. And I just did a big brain dump of everything that I had that I knew was within my periphery. I organized it all. And then I delegated and I just started post-it stickying everything that I possibly could to give to all of the team members. So they'd have these things before they got into the office, like they were already at their desks, and they could get to work with stuff and not come looking for me right away. And I could start getting right into the work that I had to do. And, you know, it's funny because like we talk about this all the time about setting up and like planning a little bit and doing a little bit of giving a little energy in preparation. And how some people are like, no, I just have to get to the work. I just have to get it done. But this was a perfect example for me as to getting that chaos and that drama out of my head, because I walked into my office and said, this office looks like a bomb hit it. Like it looks like chaos, and realized just how much that environment really gets to me, like mentally, physically. I'm like, where do I begin? Well, where I had to begin was to put it down on a list, put it down on paper, and so that I could see. And while it felt like it was going to be a never ending, super long list, it was probably the front page of a piece of computer paper and like a little bit more on the back. And I was able to delegate about 10 or 12 things right off the bat.
Yeah. And, you know, doing that also made me see and recognize that, okay, not everything on this list is going to take 3 hours to do.
Right.
Like there are certain things, like I made a list and there were certain things that I was able to get done in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And I'm saying to myself, okay, you are killing yourself.
Yeah.
Like why are you doing this to yourself? I imagine when I look at a big list like that and I think about all of the things that we have to do, in my head, everything on that list is going to take hours. And so that's also where I make it worse for myself. Because if I just sat down and focused on the list and started checking things off, there are certain things that take 3 minutes and not 3 hours.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. We totally can overestimate when we're in that place of like, everything is stressful, everything is overwhelming, the drama that can play out in your head because you're like, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to get all of this work done? And then when you're actually in it, or when you're through it, hindsight is like, oh wait, that's all I spent. So I just spent the past 3 weeks worrying about this thing, but it really only took me like 6 hours total over a period of 3 weeks. Like, are you nuts? That's nothing.
Yeah, seriously. So I think if you are like us and you make such a huge deal out of everything and are overwhelmed by the number of things that you have to do, it is so helpful to just either take out your phone, some people are not old school like we are.
Yeah.
Like we like to write things down on a piece of paper. Open up the notes on your phone and just start making a list.
Yeah.
Even like when I go food shopping, I even do it for when I go food shopping. Like if I have a lot of things that I need to remember, I'll open up the notes section on my phone. I'll make my list. And as I'm going through the store, I check things off on the list. Right.
Yeah.
And even just visually seeing that, it makes me feel better to know that I have this list. These are the things I need to get done. And I'm actually checking things off.
And don't you also find though, too, that like other stressors in your life bleed into and like almost magnify the simple things, right? So like something like food shopping, I'm thinking about food shopping, but then I'm also thinking about, I have to unpack it. Then we have to get ready for this. Then I got to fill out this card. I got to wrap this gift. And then food shopping becomes a stressor. Right. When in fact, it's like, you only have to get 15 things. Like, what is wrong with you? Right. This is not that big of a deal. But when you keep it all up here, and I'm motioning at my head right now, that's the problem, is that you can just magnify everything because you're not separating out and just tackling one thing at a time.
And even if you, so I know I've talked about this before, but even at the beginning of every day, I have my list, right, of things that I need to get done. And this is a notepad that I bought in Staples that I absolutely love. And the left side says do now, and the right side says do later.
Oh,
so on the left side for do now, I put down the things that have got to get done that day, like no choice.
Yep.
On the right side, there are things that I would prefer to get done that day, but if I don't get to them, it's not a crisis.
Right.
I literally will write them again on my list for the next day if I didn't get to them. So I just go through and I check things off, but it's helpful to see, like, split it down the middle and see what absolutely has to get done that day and what can wait.
Yeah.
But I would never be able to make my daily list if I didn't first make the bigger list.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, totally. I'm the same exact way. So I have a couple of big projects happening right now, but then I also have a lot of little stuff coming in. Like when it comes to like onboarding new clients, it's a lot of communication. It's a lot of conversations, emails, document exchange. There's a lot to it that builds a foundation to start representing a client. And that typically can stress me out because I know I want to spend really good substantive time with clients. But then when you have these bigger projects that you know you need to tackle at the same time, it's like, okay, how can you plan your time accordingly? And for the past couple of days, as a flip side, I've actually been helping myself by using more of a snowball method as opposed to like a huge focus block in the morning, because I find that I know that these smaller clients are going to start reaching out to me by the afternoon if they haven't heard from me in the morning. Whereas the bigger client, the client that I'm working on the big project for, they're not. They know that I'm just working behind the scenes and in the background. So what I did is I actually adjusted my schedule just for this time being to make this plan more manageable and not feel as chaotic. And I knew that if I planned accordingly, I could get 10 to 12 things done in the morning, completely done, and then off of my plate, off of my brain, and they could wait until the following day. And then I could use the afternoon to really focus on the other project that I have going on. And while I know my energy is typically higher in the morning and it's a little more focused, I also know that sometimes you have to make that adjustment just to tame the chaos and the overwhelm and be like, okay, me getting those 12 things off my to-do list actually helped give me a boost of momentum and like, let's keep the day going. And okay, that stuff is behind me. Now I have a clear afternoon of quiet and focus.
Yeah. And I think this is especially helpful at this time of year.
Oh, yeah.
Heading into
Totally.
the holidays, because this time of year can be so overwhelming. You have so much shopping to do. If you host for the holidays, like I do, and you do, like, you got to make sure everything's ready. You got to go food shopping. It's like all the things that need to be done and leading up. It's like the calm before the storm, right before Thanksgiving. So two, if you get, stressed out by the holidays and everything you have going on now, take out a piece of paper or the notes section on your phone, make a list of everything. Even if you have like a column for work, a column for personal, if you have to separate it like that, fine. So, but make a list of everything you have to do. Look at the next 2 months, see all the event. Cause I mean, how many events are we going to have for the end of the year? We have holiday lunches, dinners, all these things, right? Put it all on the calendar, make a list of all the things you need to do. And it will definitely be more manageable if you have a list and you can prioritize and you check things off as you're going along.
And not to get super savvy, because this is going to be shocking, but so my husband and I host Christmas every year because our son's born on Christmas. So we kind of took over the holiday, but we actually have a shared reminder in our phones of our Christmas menu for the holiday. So we can refer back to it every single year and be like, oh, what did we do last year? Oh, we got rolls. We did this. We ordered this for dinner. And we can look at it year over year.
I love that.
Because we've checked it off and it doesn't go away unless you delete it, but we're able to refer back. So like to your point,
I like that.
For us that celebrate Christmas, it comes every year on December 25th.
Right.
So we know now we have like a
that's so true.
Real reminder in that is just set up and ready. And that's our plan. So that's why while Christmas could be overwhelming for some, it's not overwhelming for us because we're like, we got it down pat now.
Right. Yes.
We have a plan.
So where are we? We're in the second week of November.
Whew.
It's no surprise that Thanksgiving is coming. What is it? The 23rd this year?
Yeah.
Thanksgiving's on the 23rd. Christmas is always on December 25th. I don't know when Hanukkah falls this year, but it's sometime in December.
Yeah.
Like nobody should be surprised by these holidays.
Yes.
So take the time now, take out a piece of paper, open up your notes app, make the list, check things off. And if you prioritize, you will definitely make managing the chaos much easier, especially at this time of year. So we hope these tips were helpful. We thank you for spending time with us, and we'll talk to you on the next episode.